AITA for not helping pay $5,600 dinner bill. She specifically invited a lot of people to a restaurant where you can't split the bill. I, 26F, am in this weird situation with a friend, and I'm honestly starting to question whether I did something wrong or if this whole thing has just been blown way out of proportion. For some context, my friend Paisley, not her real name, had her birthday dinner on June 1st. I've known Paisley for a few years now, and while she can be fun and outgoing, she also has a tendency to get dramatic over small things. Her birthday dinners are always kind of a big deal, with a lot of people, usually a pricey venue, and a sort of everyone shows up, dresses up, and celebrates me vibe, which is totally fine. It's her birthday, after all. This year, my boyfriend and I went to the dinner, and we weren't alone. We also came with my other close friend Daniela and her boyfriend. The dinner was at this upscale restaurant that Paisley chose, and in total, there were 17 people there besides the 4 of us. So 21 people altogether. Now, here's where things start to get tricky. Because of something that happened last year at her birthday, my boyfriend was really insistent that we have a separate bill. I wasn't even at last year's dinner, but Daniela was, and apparently it was a mess. One of Paisley's friends put the entire group's bill on her credit card and was supposed to get reimbursed through apps like Cash App or Venmo. But not everyone followed through, and she ended up getting stuck with something like $800 that nobody paid her back. Ever since Daniela told us about that, my boyfriend was completely against doing a group tab or being part of one bill at Paisley's events. And to be honest, I understood where he was coming from. It sounded super stressful and completely avoidable. So when we found out where Paisley was hosting her birthday dinner this year, I took it upon myself to call the restaurant ahead of time. I specifically asked if it would be possible to have our own separate tab, just for the 4 of us, and they told me yes, we could do that. They were also very clear that the restaurant itself does not split the bill at the end of the night. They require one person to pay the full amount, either in cash or on one card. So if you don't make prior arrangements, you're either paying for the whole group yourself or chasing down people for reimbursements. I thought we were being super proactive and responsible. We showed up, celebrated with everyone, ordered our own food and drinks, and just had a good time. At one point during the night, Paisley offered me a cracker with caviar. I had never tried caviar before, and she kind of insisted I try it. So I took one cracker with a small amount of caviar on it. I didn't ask for it, and I didn't go back for more. It was literally just one bite, and that was it. Later on, we asked for our check about 30 minutes before the rest of the group did. We wanted to beat the rush and not get caught up in the payment drama we kind of saw coming. Our bill for the 4 of us came out to about $650 before tip, and we left a good tip on top of that. We paid our bill completely, no one else had to cover a cent, and we were ready to head out. But when the rest of the group's bill came, things took a turn. Paisley got upset. She felt like we had broken some sort of unspoken rule of restaurant etiquette by having a separate bill. She said it made her feel like we were distancing ourselves from the group and not being team players. She also said that because I ate one cracker of her caviar, should have contributed to their bill. At first I thought she was joking or just tipsy and being dramatic, but no, she was serious. We were standing by the front waiting to leave when she brought this up. She looked genuinely annoyed and said I owed money. I didn't want to cause a scene, and I also didn't want to leave on a bad note, so I pulled out $50 from my wallet and handed it to her. I told her I appreciated her sharing and that this was a gesture of goodwill. I thought that was more than fair for one cracker of caviar that I didn't ask for and had no clue was going to come with strings attached. But apparently, that wasn't enough. Since the dinner, she's been distant and passive-aggressively posting online about how some people don't understand proper etiquette, how she felt disrespected at her own birthday, and how real friends don't nickel and dime each other. She even messaged me and said that she thinks I should apologize and give her more money. She claims that her bill was short because so many people paid less than what they owed, and she thinks everyone should pitch in, especially because we didn't stick around to help sort it out. To be perfectly honest, I'm kind of baffled. We paid our entire bill. We didn't eat off anyone else's plate, we didn't share drinks, we didn't take up space on their check. We were polite, we mingled, we brought gifts, we sang happy birthday. I even gave her a $50 cash gift at the end over one cracker of caviar. I truly don't think that bite cost anywhere near that much. I feel like I was generous and respectful. But now I'm being made to feel like I committed some huge social offense. I'm not sure if she's projecting the stress from her bill onto me or if she's still traumatized from last year's dinner situation and just looking for someone to blame. I know she was probably hoping this year would go differently, but I did everything I could to prevent that exact scenario from repeating itself, for myself, at least. Now I'm stuck wondering, was I wrong to have a separate bill? Should I have given her more money just to smooth things over, even if I didn't feel like I owed anything? Should I apologize to keep the peace, even though I genuinely don't believe I did anything wrong? I'm really confused and don't want to be the bad guy here. But I also don't want to be guilt-tripped into paying extra for something I didn't order, didn't agree to, and didn't benefit from. So am I the asshole? Update 1. 6 weeks after the disaster that was Paisley's birthday dinner, things had quieted down somewhat between us. She had stopped directly messaging me about the money, though she was still liking shady posts and occasionally reposting vague Instagram stories about people who take more than they give. I chalked it up to lingering tension and decided to keep my distance. I figured it would all fade with time. Then, in a group chat that had gone mostly dormant since the dinner, Paisley sent out a message saying she was planning a casual Friday get-together at a local Mexican restaurant. Her message was breezy and light, nothing fancy, just margs and laughs. Everyone just jump in, super chill vibes only. She emphasized the casual part multiple times, even adding emojis and saying it was just something small to kick off the weekend. Against my better judgment, I decided to go. So did my boyfriend, Daniela, and her boyfriend. The four of us figured it would be fine, we'd show up, have a drink or two, catch up with some people, and bounce. It sounded low-key, like the kind of thing where people just hang out and pay for what they order. But when we walked in, I realized immediately I had been naive. It was not a chill hangout. It was another full-on event, and not in a subtle way. The table was long, already arranged for a big party, and there were 18 people seated or trickling in, many of whom I didn't even recognize. People had dressed up again, some were bringing wrapped gifts, and someone was already ordering rounds of drinks like it was a planned celebration. There were even small decorations on the table, balloons tied to chairs, custom-printed napkins, and personalized name cards in little holders, as if this had been carefully organized in advance. I felt this weird wave of déjà vu, like I had walked right back into the same trap from 6 weeks ago. We were immediately greeted with a round of side eyes when we asked the server about having a separate bill. He looked sympathetic but told us that, unfortunately, the restaurant only did one bill per table, no exceptions. We asked if it was possible to move to another table or sit at the bar instead so we could open a separate tab, and he said yes, that would work. We were about to take him up on that when Paisley overheard and swooped in with this exaggerated look of offense on her face. She said that if we moved, it would be rude. She said it looked like we were separating ourselves from the group again and accused us of making everything transactional. She kept repeating how this was supposed to be about friendship and togetherness, and how certain people always made it about math and receipts. At this point, people were watching, and I was mortified. I did not want to start another scene, so we reluctantly sat down with the group. The four of us made a point to keep our ordering minimal. I had a soda, just one. My boyfriend had a beer. Daniela and her boyfriend split a small appetizer. We did not participate in the communal guacamole platters or the endless pitchers of margaritas making their way around the table. We didn't touch the flan someone ordered for the group or the churros that were being passed around like communion. I didn't even take a chip from the shared basket. We chatted politely, smiled when photos were taken, and made it very clear that we were not here to spend hundreds of dollars on mystery items and surprise communal cocktails. As the evening wore on, I started to feel that same familiar knot tightening in my stomach. People were clearly not keeping track of what they were ordering. Someone ordered 3 extra margaritas for the table and then got up and left early. One couple decided to cover half their share with cash and the rest with sending it later. The server brought out the single, monstrous bill and placed it delicately in the center of the table like it was a loaded weapon. And right on cue, chaos unfolded. Paisley stood up and started sorting the bill, like she had appointed herself team captain again. She began calling out totals and asking who had what. People were mumbling and fumbling, passing cards and squinting at the check. The tension was thick, but I was staying quiet. I had nothing to explain. I had ordered a soda. That was it. I was ready to give cash for the exact amount of my drink, plus a generous tip, and walk out with my dignity intact. But then Paisley started in with the passive-aggressive comments. She said loud enough for everyone to hear that some people always manage to drink the air at other people's tables while contributing nothing. She said that you could always count on certain people to show up empty and leave full. She said that friendship wasn't about counting pennies, but it sure was funny how the same people kept doing the math when it was convenient for them. Every word was dripping with accusation, and though she didn't say our names, everyone knew who she was talking about. I kept my eyes on the table, willing myself to stay calm. Then she looked directly at me and Daniela and said that she considered us energy parasites. That we drained the group, took what we wanted, and left without giving back. That we were transactional in a way that made everyone else feel cheap. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had paid my way at the last dinner, plus extra. I had endured her public tantrum with grace. And now I was being called a parasite for drinking a soda at a dinner I didn't even know was a celebration. I stood up. Daniela followed. We both quietly said we were leaving, thanked the server, and walked out. My boyfriend and hers didn't say a word either. We paid for our items separately at the host stand, tipped in cash, and left. No drama. No confrontation. Just four people walking out of a situation that had become absurd. As we drove home, no one really spoke. We were all too stunned. I kept replaying the whole night in my head. The setup, the guilt-tripping, the manipulation disguised as friendship. I felt drained and confused, and worst of all, I still couldn't understand why she was doing this. I was still thinking then, is this really happening again? Is she doing this on purpose? Update 2. 2 weeks after the Mexican restaurant fiasco, just when I thought things had finally settled down, a new invite popped up. This time, it wasn't piously organizing anything. It came from her friend Haley, who had always been more of a background presence in our social circle, pleasant enough, not particularly close, but someone I had never had issues with. The message was for a Sunday brunch, in honor of Paisley's return from her trip. The tone was light, casual, and unassuming. The invite emphasized relaxed vibes and low-key fun. The words, "casual vibes only," were actually written in bold in the description. After everything that had happened, it felt like a possible peace offering. I was hesitant, of course. After 2 disastrous dinners in a row, I had good reason to be skeptical. But Haley had never been part of the drama, and this time it sounded like it might actually be casual. No birthday. No guest of honor. No large party dinners at places that don't split bills. Just a relaxed brunch to catch up. Daniela and I talked about it and decided we'd give it one more try. We showed up once again as our usual group of 4, me, my boyfriend, Daniela, and her boyfriend. As we got out of the car and approached the venue, my heart sank. The location wasn't a cozy brunch cafe or neighborhood spot. It was a high-end rooftop restaurant in the center of the city. One of those places where the floors are marble, the host wears a headset, and everything smells like lemon verbena and money. It was not casual in any sense of the word. Everyone was already seated when we arrived, dressed to impress. The women were in heels and designer sunglasses, the men in tailored button-ups and loafers with no socks. There were flower arrangements on the tables, custom menus with monograms, and shared platters already halfway eaten. Cheese boards, oysters, smoked salmon, spritzers, bellinis, Bloody Mary pitchers, spread across the table like it had been curated by an event planner. I felt immediately out of place. Not just underdressed, but deceived. Again. We walked over and found that there were only 4 seats left, together, but not exactly welcomed with open arms. The energy shifted when we arrived. It wasn't overtly hostile, but it wasn't warm either. Haley smiled, but it felt like a performance. Paisley gave me a cool nod and went back to laughing with a new group of friends I hadn't seen before. These were not the old group. These were polished, influencer-looking people with calculated outfits and rehearsed small talk. I flagged down a waiter discreetly and asked, again, if we could get a separate check, just for the 4 of us. His entire demeanor changed. His jaw tightened, and he told me, in the most clipped tone imaginable, that this restaurant does not split bills. Period. Not manually, not by app, not by request. He said that all tables must pay as one and that it's policy. Then he walked away without waiting for a response. My boyfriend leaned in and quietly said we should just leave. I agreed. But for a second, I hesitated. I thought, maybe this was all just a misunderstanding. Maybe Haley hadn't realized how this would go down. Maybe Piously had nothing to do with the planning this time. We didn't want to make a scene, so we stayed, barely. We sat, ordered 4 coffees, didn't touch the food or drinks on the table, left $20 in cash, thanked the server, and quietly walked out. We hadn't even made it to the parking garage before I started feeling the knot in my stomach again. The next morning, Piously posted a story on her Instagram with a black background and white text that read, "If you're not willing to pay, don't show up. Choosing to be stingy is choosing to be excluded." No tags. No names. But the timing was unmistakable. She followed it with a few aesthetic photos from the brunch, her posing with cocktails, clinking glasses with Haley, surrounded by the new crowd. Daniela and I were nowhere in sight. An hour later, I got a message from her. It wasn't even subtle anymore. She accused me of putting her down in front of her new circle of friends. She said I needed to realize my toxic energy, and that I was dragging down the vibe every time I came around. She said I was constantly calculating costs and that it was making everyone uncomfortable. According to her, I wasn't just frugal, I was actively disrespectful. She went on to say that my presence was disruptive, that I didn't know how to be part of a group, and that if I wasn't willing to contribute equally, I should stop showing up at all. I sat there staring at the message, feeling a weird mix of shame, confusion, and complete disbelief. This wasn't a miscommunication. It wasn't a casual oversight. It felt strategic. Planned. Like a deliberate trap. There was no reason to advertise it as a casual brunch when it was clearly a curated, expensive, group-sharing event. And no one, not even Haley, had warned us about the venue or how it worked. It was the same pattern all over again, only this time with a fresh coat of gloss and new faces to witness the spectacle. Daniela messaged me later that night, feeling the exact same way. She said it outright, it felt like we were being set up. Like our presence was needed not for friendship, but to help cover the bill. Not as guests, but as buffers, quiet wallets who wouldn't argue, wouldn't challenge the plan, just absorb the overflow. She said what I had been trying not to say out loud. Daniela and I started to think that we were just invited to compensate for the general bill. Update 3. A few weeks after the rooftop brunch debacle, the third in a string of increasingly surreal and tense gatherings, Daniela reached out to me with an idea. She suggested we make one final attempt to clear the air with Piously. Not in a group setting, not through vague social media posts or passive-aggressive messages, but face-to-face. A direct, honest conversation over coffee. At first, I was hesitant. Everything that had happened felt so deliberately constructed, like each event had been designed to corner us. But Daniela's point was fair, if we were going to walk away from this group, we should at least try to end it with clarity. So the 3 of us, Daniela, Piously, and I, agreed to meet at a quiet cafe on a Saturday afternoon. It wasn't one of Piously's usual scene-heavy spots, which gave me a small amount of hope that this might go differently. She arrived on time, looking composed and disarmingly friendly, like none of the last few months had happened. For the first few minutes, the conversation was gentle, almost polite. We made small talk about her trip, about the weather, even about work. But the tension was sitting there beneath the surface like a hairline crack in a wine glass, unseen by the casual observer, but impossible to ignore once you knew it was there. It didn't take long before the conversation shifted. Piously brought up the brunch, then the dinner before that, and then, inevitably, the birthday. She said she still didn't understand why we chose to isolate ourselves financially from the group. She said it felt cold, transactional, and untrusting. She said, bluntly, I'm not inviting you to sit on the sidelines, but to be part of the experience. The group account is part of it. I was stunned, not by what she said, but by how plainly she said it. There was no room for interpretation. In her eyes, paying as a group wasn't just a method of convenience, it was a symbol of unity, loyalty, belonging. To choose otherwise was, in her mind, to reject the friendship entirely. Daniela tried to explain that everyone has the right to choose how they handle their finances. That opting out of a group bill doesn't mean opting out of the group emotionally. That we had been consistent, respectful, and clear about our boundaries from the start. That there's nothing offensive about wanting to avoid being on the hook for hundreds of dollars in someone else's chaos. Piously disagreed. She said real friends trust each other, and that includes trusting the group account. That the whole point was that no one would take advantage, and that by refusing to participate, we were sending a message that we didn't believe others would treat us fairly. At that point, my boyfriend, who had been quiet for most of this, finally asked, "So it's all about trust issues and money?" Piously didn't argue. She just nodded. That was all we needed to hear. We thanked her for being honest and for showing up. We didn't yell, we didn't cry, and we didn't beg for resolution. We paid for our drinks, hugged her goodbye like people who know they won't see each other again, and walked out. There was no grand confrontation. No social media explosion. Just silence. From that day forward, we stopped responding to invitations. We didn't block anyone, we didn't make an announcement, and we didn't rally others to take sides. We just stopped showing up. Group chats continued without us, stories were posted, inside jokes rolled on, but none of it involved us anymore, and that was fine. For the first time in months, I felt like I was breathing again. A couple of months after that final coffee meeting, I saw a post on Piously's page. It was a photo of her at another gathering, surrounded by her new circle, well-dressed, coordinated, smiling wide. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to break up with people who think that a separate salary means independence, not lack of participation." It wasn't subtle. It wasn't supposed to be. It was another carefully framed jab, this time dressed in faux empowerment. But I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't even feel sad. Because by then, I had finally come to terms with the truth, I wasn't toxic. I wasn't negative. I wasn't wrong for wanting to handle my money responsibly, for setting boundaries, or for refusing to absorb someone else's emotional projections under the guise of friendship. I was just someone who refused to keep playing a game with rules that were always shifting, rules that were never fair to begin with. And walking away wasn't betrayal. It was self-respect. That was the end of the story. And I no longer feel guilty. I wasn't toxic, I just refused to play a game with unfair rules.